A classroom aide was fired for helping an autistic boy during a meltdown. She thought her career was over. What she didn't know, the boy's father had been watching from across the street. And he wasn't just any father. He was a vampire king who'd do anything to protect his son, including making her family. The screaming started at exactly 10:47 a.m. Alistair Thorne checked his watch from the rooftop across the street, his jaw tightening. 3 minutes earlier than yesterday. Rowan's meltdowns were getting worse, and there wasn't a damn thing his centuries of power could do about it. Through the chain-link fence of Riverside Elementary, he watched his 7-year-old son rock back and forth on the playground asphalt, small hands clamped over his ears. The other children had formed a wide circle around him, some pointing, others laughing. The sound of their voices, sharp, chaotic, unpredictable, would feel like knives to Rowan's sensitive hearing. Alistair had been a king for over 800 years. He'd commanded armies, negotiated treaties written in blood, and survived 3 separate assassination attempts before breakfast. But watching his son suffer from a distance, unable to help without exposing what they truly were, made him feel more powerless than he'd ever felt in battle. The playground aides stood in a cluster near the basketball court, coffee cups in hand, completely oblivious. All except one. Mara Chin moved through the crowd of children like water flowing around stones, smooth, purposeful, unbothered by their chaos. She was young, maybe late 20s, with her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Alistair had noticed her before. She was the only aide who seemed to actually see Rowan, not just supervise him. She crouched down about 6 feet from his son. Not too close, Alistair noted with approval, and began humming. Low and steady, a sound that cut through the playground noise like a beacon. Rowan's rocking slowed. His fingers loosened slightly from his ears. Without a word, Mara stood and walked toward the corner of the building where a small garden area sat in shade. She didn't look back, didn't call Rowan's name, didn't touch him. She just led. And Rowan followed. Alistair leaned forward, fascinated. In the 6 months since he'd enrolled Rowan in this school, desperate for his son to have some semblance of a normal childhood, no one had managed to de-escalate a meltdown that quickly. Usually, it took 40 minutes, a call to the office, and Rowan completely exhausting himself. In the shaded garden area, Mara sat on a wooden bench. Rowan climbed up beside her, still not speaking, and began tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. His breathing had returned to normal. The tension in his small shoulders had melted away. Alistair felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest.
Hope, maybe.
Or gratitude. Then Principal Davidson appeared around the corner like a thundercloud in a cheap suit. Miss Chin. His voice boomed across the playground. Several children stopped playing to stare. What exactly do you think you're doing? Mara stood slowly, positioning herself between the principal and Rowan. Rowan was overstimulated. I brought him somewhere quiet too. You removed a student from the designated play area without permission, Davidson interrupted, his face reddening. This is the 3rd time this month you've broken protocol. You were specifically told to keep all students within visual range of the main supervisor. He was having a sensory overload, Mara said, her voice calm but firm. What he needed was for you to follow the rules. Davidson's voice rose higher. By now, every child on the playground had stopped playing. Every aide was watching. Rowan's hands crept back toward his ears. This school has procedures, Miss Chun. Procedures that exist for student safety. Your constant disregard for authority. My disregard? Mara's calm cracked, just slightly. I've submitted 14 incident reports about supervision gaps during recess. I've requested training on neurodivergent support 3 times. I've begged for sensory-friendly spaces, and you've ignored every single. You're fired. The words dropped like stones into still water. Mara blinked. What? Effective immediately. Collect your belongings from your desk and leave the premises. Davidson pulled out his phone, already typing. Security will escort you out. On the rooftop, Alistair's hands gripped the concrete ledge hard enough to crack it. Ancient rage, The kind that had once raised villages and toppled kingdoms, surged through his veins. His eyes flickered from gray to deep crimson. This pathetic excuse for an educator had just fired the only person who'd shown his son genuine kindness. This is about the budget complaint, isn't it? Mara's voice shook now, but not with fear. With fury. You cut funding for special education and spent it on new football equipment. You got rid of 3 trained aides and replaced them with untrained volunteers. This isn't about protocol. This is about silencing anyone who calls out your one more word, and I'll ensure you never work in education again, Davidson said coldly. Security. Rowan had started rocking again, harder this time. The stick fell from his hands. He made a sound, a small, wounded keen that Alistair heard even from across the street. The decision made itself. Alistair stepped off the rooftop. He didn't fall. Falling was for humans and gravity. He descended with supernatural grace, his long black coat billowing, landing silently on the sidewalk. He straightened his tie, put on his sunglasses, and walked toward the school entrance with the measured pace of a man who'd learned patience over centuries. By the time he reached the playground, a security guard had arrived and was attempting to take Mara's elbow. She jerked away. "Don't touch me. I can walk myself out." "I'm afraid that won't be necessary," Alistair said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Everyone turned. He'd perfected this appearance over centuries, human enough to pass, but with something indefinably other that made people's instincts scream warnings they couldn't quite articulate. He was tall, dark-haired, with features that were just slightly too symmetrical, too sharp. When he removed his sunglasses, his gray eyes pinned Principal Davidson in place like a butterfly on a board. "Mr. Thorne," Davidson stammered, his earlier bluster evaporating. "I didn't realize you were. This is a school matter." "Involving my son," Alistair said quietly. "Dangerously. Which makes it very much my matter." "Miss Chun, I believe you were helping Rowan?" Mara stared at him, clearly not recognizing him. Alistair had always picked Rowan up in different vehicles, usually with tinted windows, deliberately keeping his distance. But now, "I was just doing my job," she said carefully. "And doing it well." Alistair turned to Davidson, and his smile had too many teeth. "Which is more than I can say for this institution. Tell me, Principal Davidson, should we discuss your employment history? The lawsuit from your previous school? The 3 formal complaints about misappropriation of funds? Or should we discuss why the Board of Education might be very interested in learning how their special needs budget was redirected?" Davidson's face went from red to white. You can't." "I can. I have. In fact, I've already made several calls." Alistair checked his watch. "Your suspension should be official in approximately 8 minutes. The silence on the playground was absolute. Alistair looked at Mara, who stood frozen, eyes wide. "Miss Chun, would you mind staying with Rowan until I sort this out? He trusts you." "That's rare." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition neither of them understood yet. Mara nodded slowly and walked back to the garden area where Rowan sat, still rocking. The moment she sat beside him, humming that same low, steady tone, the boy's hands lowered from his ears. And Alistair saw it. Just for a second, so faint a human would never notice, a shimmer in the air around her. A soft, golden glow that wrapped around his son like a blanket. His heart, which hadn't truly beaten in centuries, stuttered in his chest. No, he thought. It can't be. But he knew exactly what he'd just witnessed. The mediator bloodline, extinct for over 200 years. Or so the vampire world had believed. This changed everything. The school board arrived within the hour. Alistair had made certain of it. When you'd spent centuries building networks of influence, a favor here, a carefully placed investment there, you learned that power wasn't about violence. It was about knowing exactly which threads to pull. He stood in Principal Davidson's office now, watching the man sweat through his dress shirt while 3 board members reviewed documents spread across the desk. Financial records. emails, incident reports that had been mysteriously lost in the system. Mr. Davidson, Board President Linda Hartwell said, her voice cold enough to freeze glass, can you explain why $12,000 allocated for sensory equipment was redirected to athletic facilities? Davidson's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. That was the football program needed. The football program is fully funded through boosters. Hartwell cut him off. She turned to Alistair. Mr. Thorne, I apologize that it took your intervention to bring these irregularities to light. I'm less concerned with apologies than results, Alistair said smoothly. Rowan deserves better. All the special needs students deserve better. Agreed. Hartwell stood, gathering the documents. Mr. Davidson, you're suspended pending a full investigation. We'll be in touch. Davidson's face had gone purple. You can't. This is because of her. That Chun woman poisoned you against me. Miss Chun, Alistair said, his voice dropping to a register that made everyone in the room unconsciously step back, did her job. You failed to do yours. There's a difference. The temperature in the office seemed to plummet. Davidson went silent, some primal part of his brain recognizing a predator, even if his conscious mind couldn't understand why. 20 minutes later, Alistair found Mara in the garden area, still sitting with Rowan. His son had stopped rocking entirely and was drawing in a small notebook she must have given him. The drawings were intricate spirals, each one perfectly symmetrical. Mr. Thorne, Mara stood quickly, brushing dirt from her jeans. I should go. I don't want to cause more trouble. You didn't cause trouble. You exposed it. Alistair studied her carefully. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the defensive set of her shoulders. Someone used to fighting battles alone. The principal has been suspended. You're welcome to return to your position. Mara's laugh was bitter.
Right.
And work under whoever they replace him with, who'll resent me for getting their colleague fired. I know how this works. She was right, of course.
Sharp.
Alistair appreciated that. Then don't come back as an aide, he said. Come work for me. Mara blinked. What? Rowan needs consistency. Specialized support. You clearly have a gift for understanding his needs. Alistair chose his words carefully. He couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. That her very presence calmed something ancient and volatile in his son's blood. That she carried a genetic legacy that made her invaluable, irreplaceable. I'm prepared to offer you double your current salary to work as his private behavioral therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, Mara said slowly. Then I'll pay for your certification. And your salary while you train. Alistair pulled out a business card, cream cardstock with minimal text. Just a name and phone number. Think about it. Mara stared at the card like it might bite her.
Why?
You don't know me. For all you know, I could be. You could be what? Someone who puts a child's needs above arbitrary rules? Someone who sees past the surface. Alistair glanced at Rowan, who was still drawing, peaceful in a way he rarely was. I've watched you with my son for 6 months, Miss Chen. I know exactly who you are. Something shifted in Mara's expression. Wariness, maybe, or recognition that this strange, intense man had been watching.
That's
kind of creepy, actually. I prefer protective. Alistair allowed himself a small smile. Rowan is everything to me. I won't apologize for being thorough. Before Mara could respond, Rowan looked up from his notebook. His eyes, striking gray, just like his father's, fixed on her face. Then, so quietly it was almost inaudible, he whispered a single word. Stay. Mara's breath caught. Alistair froze. Rowan hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Not since the last major meltdown, when the stress had locked his voice away entirely. His therapist said it was selective mutism, common with autism, and that pushing would only make it worse. But here, now, with this woman. Rowan. Mara knelt down, careful to stay at his level without invading his space. Did you just stay? Rowan repeated, slightly louder. His small hand reached out, not quite touching her, but close. A gesture of trust from a boy who hated unexpected contact. Mara's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, professional mask slipping back into place, but Alistair had seen it. The genuine emotion. The connection. "Okay," she whispered to Rowan. "Okay, I'll stay." She stood, turning to Alistair with something fierce in her expression. "But I have conditions.
I want a written contract.
I want access to all his medical and educational records. I want input on his care plan, not just to be a glorified babysitter. And if I think something you're doing is wrong for him, I'm going to say so, regardless of how much you're paying me." Alistair felt that unfamiliar emotion again.
Not just gratitude this time.
Respect. "Agreed," he said. "All of it." They shook hands, and the moment their skin touched, Alistair felt it. A pulse of energy, warm and steady, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Mara gasped softly and pulled her hand back, rubbing her palm with a confused expression. She'd felt it too. "I'll have my lawyer draft the contract," Alistair said, keeping his voice even despite the shock running through his system. "Can you start tomorrow?" Yes. Tomorrow, Mara picked up her bag, gave Rowan one last smile. "I'll see you soon, buddy." Rowan nodded, already back to his drawings. As Mara walked away across the playground, Alistair pulled out his phone and typed a single message to his second-in-command. "Found something impossible. The mediator line isn't extinct. Send a protective detail immediately. Tell no one else." The response came in seconds. "The council will demand answers." Alistair looked at his son, finally calm, finally at peace. Then at Mara's retreating figure, unaware that she'd just become the most valuable and most endangered person in the supernatural world. "The council can demand whatever they want," he typed back. "They won't touch her." He just hoped he could keep that promise. Because if the council learned what Mara was, they wouldn't just want her monitored or controlled. They'd want her eliminated before she could change the balance of power that had stood for centuries. The only question was, how long did he have before they found out? That evening, Alistair's safe house felt like a prison. It wasn't his main residence. That sprawling estate was too exposed, too known. This place was hidden in plain sight, a modest two-story house in a quiet suburb, warded with protections that would fry any vampire who approached with hostile intent. To neighbors, he was just another single father struggling to raise a special needs child. If only they knew the truth. Rowan sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by blank paper and colored pencils. He'd been drawing for 2 hours straight, barely pausing to breathe. Spiral after spiral after spiral, each one more frantic than the last. The pencil moved so fast it tore through the paper in places. "Rowan," Alistair said gently, crouching beside his chair. "It's time for dinner, buddy." No response. The spirals continued, growing tighter, more desperate. Alistair felt helplessness creep back in. He'd faced down elder vampires in blood duels, negotiated with werewolf packs, survived political machinations that would make Machiavelli weep. But his 7-year-old son, lost in his own world, unreachable. This was the enemy he couldn't fight. "Rowan, please." Alistair placed a hand on the table, careful not to touch his son. "Talk to me." The pencil snapped in Rowan's hand. He stared at the broken pieces, and something shifted in his expression. His breathing quickened. His hands began to shake. "Oh no." "It's okay," Alistair said quickly. "We have more pencils. Look, right here." But Rowan was already spiraling. His hands flew to his ears. A keening sound built in his throat, high-pitched, agonized. The lights in the kitchen began to flicker.
No.
Not this.
Not now.
When Rowan's emotions overwhelmed him, his dormant vampire abilities surfaced. Energy crackled in the air like static electricity. A glass on the counter shattered. Another. The light bulbs overhead exploded, plunging the kitchen into darkness except for the faint glow of streetlights through the window. "Rowan." Alistair tried to project calm, but his son couldn't hear him past the storm in his own mind. The boy slid from his chair and curled into a ball on the floor, still keening. The sound pierced Alistair's heart more effectively than any wooden stake. He'd tried everything. Weighted blankets, noise-canceling headphones,
Pressure therapy.
sometimes they worked, sometimes nothing worked, and all he could do was wait for the meltdown to burn itself out, knowing his son was suffering and he was powerless to stop it. Tonight was shaping up to be one of those times. Then Alistair's phone rang. He almost didn't answer. What could be more important than this? But the number showed Mara Chin. She'd called the emergency contact line he'd given her. Not a good time, he answered, voice strained. Is Rowan okay? Mara's voice was tight with concern. I had this weird feeling that something was wrong. Is that crazy? That's crazy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Wait. Alistair stared at his son, writhing on the floor. Mara had felt something? Across the city? Don't hang up.
Just.
Can you talk to him?
What?
I can't. He's nonverbal when he's stressed. I won't be able to. Please. Alistair put the phone on speaker and set it on the floor near Rowan's head. Just try. A pause. Then Mara's voice came through, softer now. Gentle. Hey, Rowan. It's Miss Mara. I know everything feels too big right now. Too loud. Too bright. Too much. I know. Her voice was steady. That same low hum from the playground woven through her words. But you're safe. You're in your house. Your dad is right there with you. Rowan's keening stuttered. Just for a second. I've been thinking about those drawings you made today, Mara continued. Those spirals were beautiful.
Perfect.
I bet you could teach me how to draw them sometime. Would you like that? Rowan's hands loosened slightly from his ears. Alistair held his breath. Remember how we sat in the garden? Just you and me and the quiet? We can do that again tomorrow. All the quiet you need.
No crowds. No loud bells.
Just spirals and peace. The energy in the room began to settle. The static electricity faded. Rowan's breathing slowed from panicked gasps to shuddering breaths. And then, impossibly, his small voice whispered, Mara? Alistair's heart stopped. I'm here, Mara said, and there were tears in her voice now. I'm right here, buddy. Spirals, Rowan whispered. Don't stop. I won't stop. Never. You can make all the spirals you want. Rowan's body uncurled slowly. His hands dropped from his ears. He stared at the phone with those striking gray eyes, and Alistair watched in amazement as his son reached out and touched the screen gently, as if he could touch Mara through it. Stay, Rowan whispered, the same word from earlier. But this time it sounded different. Desperate. Like a lifeline. I'm not going anywhere, Mara promised. I'll see you tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. Okay. Rowan nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Okay. The meltdown was over. Just like that. 5 minutes with Mara's voice, and the storm had passed. Alistair picked up the phone, taking it off speaker. How did you? I don't know, Mara admitted. I was making dinner, and I felt like he needed me. That sounds insane. It's not insane. Alistair watched Rowan climb back into his chair and pick up a new pencil, this time drawing slowly, calmly. You have a gift. I don't believe in gifts. I believe in paying attention, but she sounded shaken. Mr. Thorne, what aren't you telling me? That feeling I had, the weird shock when we shook hands, the way Rowan responds to me. This isn't normal. She was too observant, too smart. Alistair would have to tell her something approaching truth, and soon, or she'd walk away. And if she walked away now, Rowan might not survive the next meltdown. Tomorrow, he said. Come at 9 like you promised. We'll talk. I'll explain everything. Everything. As much as I can, he paused. Mara, thank you. You just did something no one else has been able to do. You reached him when I couldn't. Silence on the line. Then, he's a good kid, Mr. Thorne. He just experiences the world differently. That's not a flaw. That's just. Rowan. After they hung up, Alistair sat beside his son and watched him draw. The spirals were peaceful now, meditative. And in the center of one, Rowan carefully drew 3 stick figures holding hands. A tall figure, a small figure, and one in between with long dark hair. You know she's special, don't you? Alistair asked softly. Rowan nodded without looking up. She makes the noise quiet. The noise. Alistair understood. The overwhelming sensory input, yes, but also something else. The vampire abilities stirring in Rowan's blood, trying to manifest before he was ready, turning his gift of empathy into a curse. Mara's presence somehow dampened that supernatural interference. It wasn't just her bloodline. It was resonance, recognition, as if Rowan's soul knew what his mind couldn't understand yet, that Mara was meant to be his anchor in both worlds. Alistair pulled out his phone and sent another message. It's stronger than I thought. She calmed him from across the city. How soon can you verify her lineage? The response, already working on it. But if she's genuine mediator blood, the council will sense her soon. Maybe days. We need to move fast. Alistair looked at his son's drawing. 3 figures. A family that couldn't exist in the vampire world. King, heir, and human bound together. Unless he was willing to fight for it. Tomorrow, he told Rowan. Miss Mara comes tomorrow. And I promise you, I won't let anyone take her away. Rowan finally looked up at him, those ancient eyes in a child's face. Promise. Promise. He just hoped it was a promise he could keep. The Vampire Council convened at midnight. Alistair stood in the center of the circular chamber, deep beneath what humans believed was an abandoned subway station. The council met here precisely because it was forgotten, invisible to the modern world, protected by wards older than the city itself. 7 figures sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, their faces half hidden in shadow. These were the elders, vampires who'd survived centuries through cunning, cruelty, and an absolute commitment to preserving their kind's secrecy. King Alistair, Councillor Vex spoke first, her voice like silk over razor blades. She was ancient, over 1,000 years old, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. We understand you've been busy today. I handled a situation involving my son. Alistair kept his tone neutral. A school matter. A school matter that resulted in you exposing yourself publicly. Councillor Darius leaned forward, his scarred face catching the candlelight. He'd earned those scars in the vampire wars of the 1600s. You threatened a human principle. You demonstrated influence that will raise questions. You drew attention. I protected my heir. Alistair's voice hardened. Which is my right as king and as a father. No one disputes your right to protect Prince Rowan, Vex said smoothly. We dispute your method. And more importantly, your choice of companion. There it was. They knew about Mara. She's his behavioral therapist, Alistair said. Nothing more. Don't insult our intelligence, Councillor Thane spoke now, the youngest of the 7 at only 300 years old, but no less dangerous. We have eyes everywhere, Alistair. We know what she is. The temperature in the room dropped. Alistair's hand twitched toward the blade concealed beneath his coat, but he forced himself to stillness. And what, exactly, do you think she is? Vex stood, moving with predatory grace to a table where an ancient book lay open. The mediator bloodline. Extinct for 2 centuries, or so we believed. Humans bred specifically to pacify volatile vampire heirs, to smooth diplomatic relations, to bind our kind to theirs through supernatural resonance. She looked up, her eyes gleaming. Dangerous, Alistair. Profoundly dangerous. She's a 28-year-old woman who works with special needs children, Alistair countered. She doesn't even know what she is. Which makes her more dangerous, not less. Darius stood as well, his massive frame casting long shadows. An activated mediator bloodline in an untrained human? She's a beacon. Every supernatural creature within 100 miles will sense her eventually. Werewolves, witches, rogue vampires. She'll draw them all. Then we protect her, Alistair said. We eliminate her, Vex corrected coldly, before she becomes a liability. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Alistair's eyes flashed crimson.
No.
This isn't a request. Alistair, Thane rose, and the other 4 counselors stood in unison, a show of unified force. The mediator lines were disbanded for a reason. They gave humans too much influence over vampire affairs. They created bonds that weakened our kind, made us dependent on mortals who could die or be turned against us. Prince Rowan has already bonded with her, Vex continued. We've received reports of his episodes. His abilities manifesting prematurely. Uncontrolled. The boy is dangerous, Alistair, and this woman is making it worse. She's making it better. Alistair's voice cracked through the chamber like thunder. For the first time in months, Rowan can speak, can function, can exist without constant pain. You want me to take that away from him? We want you to think clearly, Darius said, his tone almost pitying. You're compromised. You're thinking like a father, not a king. The mediator bond is designed to be irresistible. It will make you believe you need her. It will make the prince dependent. But it's an illusion, Alistair. A genetic manipulation from a time when vampires were foolish enough to trust humans. Rowan needs her, Alistair repeated, his voice low and lethal. That's not an illusion. That's reality. Vex sighed, exchanging glances with the other counselors. Then we're at an impasse. The council cannot allow a mediator to influence the heir to the throne. It sets a precedent we cannot afford. What are you saying? But Alistair already knew. The human woman, Mara Chun, must be removed, Vex said formally. By whatever means necessary. If you won't do it, we will send someone who will. Alistair's hand moved to his blade in a blur of motion. He had it drawn and pointed at Vex before any of them could blink. Touch her, and I'll consider it an act of war. 7 pairs of ancient eyes stared at him. For a long moment no one moved. Then Vex smiled, a terrible, knowing expression. You're already bound to her, aren't you? The resonance has begun. You can feel her even now, where she is, what she's feeling. The bond affects not just the heir, but the heir's protector. She shook her head. You poor, foolish king. You've already lost. Alistair's jaw clenched. She was right. He could feel Mara, somewhere across the city. A warm presence in his mind, steady and bright. He'd thought it was just awareness, just his protective instincts. But it was more than that. The bond had already started. I'm giving you 72 hours, Vex said. Sever the connection. Send her away. Make sure she never sees Prince Rowan again. If you don't, she gestured to the shadows, and figures emerged, vampire assassins, faces hidden behind masks. We'll handle it ourselves. And if I refuse, then we'll have no choice but to question your fitness to rule, Thane said quietly. A king compromised by mediator magic cannot lead our people. You know this, Alistair. You wrote half these laws yourself. Alistair lowered his blade slowly. They had him trapped and they knew it. If he fought the council directly, it would mean civil war. If he refused their order, they'd move against him politically, possibly even against Rowan. But if he gave up Mara, Rowan would suffer, would regress, might never recover. 72 hours, he said finally, sheathing his weapon. And then what? You send assassins after a human woman? You murder someone whose only crime is showing kindness to a child. We do what's necessary, Vex said simply. As we always have. As you once would have, before you became sentimental. Alistair turned and walked toward the exit, his mind racing. 72 hours. 3 days to find a solution to an impossible problem. Alistair, Vex called after him. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I know you care for the boy. But some bonds are too dangerous to allow. He didn't respond. Didn't trust himself to speak without saying something that would start a war right now. As he ascended the stairs back to the surface, his phone buzzed. A text from his second-in-command. Assassin spotted near her apartment.
Oudet figure, vampire signature.
Our people intercepted, but he vanished. She doesn't know. Alistair's blood ran cold. They'd already sent someone. The 72 hours was just theater. They were moving against Mara now. He pulled up her number and hesitated. What could he tell her? Hello, by the way, vampires are real and they want to kill you because my son likes you. But he had to warn her somehow, had to keep her safe until he figured this out. Before he could type a message, another text arrived. This one from an unknown number. She's dreaming of us. The memories are waking. Mediator blood always remembers.
Verex.
Taunting him, telling him that Mara's supernatural heritage was already activating, which meant the danger was escalating faster than he'd thought. Alistair looked up at the pre-dawn sky and made a decision. If the council wanted war, they'd get it. But not before he made sure Mara and Rowan were somewhere they couldn't reach. He had 72 hours to disappear with them both. Starting now. Mara's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted factory building in the Arts District. Cheap rent, thin walls, and neighbors who minded their own business. Perfect for someone who'd spent her life learning to be invisible. She stood at her kitchen counter at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, staring at the business card Alistair Thorne had given her. The paper felt expensive between her fingers.
Heavy. Real.
Everything about today felt unreal. Getting fired. Getting hired. The way Rowan had spoken to her, looked at her, like she was the only solid thing in his chaotic world. And that feeling, the electric shock when she'd shaken Alistair's hand, the certainty that Rowan needed her even from miles away. Her rational mind said it was coincidence. Empathy. Professional intuition developed over years of working with kids. But the part of her that had grown up in foster care, that had learned to trust her instincts because adults couldn't be trusted, that part was screaming that something was wrong. Or maybe not wrong. Maybe just
Impossible.
a sound in the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate, stopping right outside her door. Mara held her breath. The building had security doors. You needed a key or a resident to buzz you in. It was almost 2:30 in the morning. No one should be. A shadow passed across the gap beneath her door. Someone was standing there, waiting. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, thumb hovering over 911. Who's there? She called out, trying to sound braver than she felt. No answer. The shadow remained, perfectly still. Mara could feel eyes on the other side of that door, watching, patient, predatory. I'm calling the police, she said louder. Still nothing. But the temperature in her apartment seemed to drop 10 degrees. Her breath misted in the air. That wasn't possible. It was May. The heat had been broken all week. Her apartment was stuffy, not freezing. Mara backed away from the door, phone clutched in her hand. She was being paranoid. Ridiculous. It was probably just a drunk neighbor at the wrong door. Or someone looking for the guy in 3B who dealt weed. But when she finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole 5 minutes later, the hallway was empty.
No sado.
No person. Nothing. Just a small piece of paper that had been slid under her door. Mara stared at it for a long moment before picking it up with trembling fingers. It was thick parchment, the kind you'd use for wedding invitations, with 3 words written in elegant script. Stay away from him.
No signature. No explanation.
But Mara knew, bone deep, instinctively, this was about Rowan. She double-checked the locks on her door, pushed a chair against the handle for good measure, and spent the rest of the night sitting on her couch with the lights on and a kitchen knife beside her. Every shadow looked wrong. Every creak of the building settling sounded like footsteps. By the time dawn broke, she'd almost convinced herself to call Alistair and quit. Whatever money he was offering wasn't worth this. She'd been threatened before, angry parents, overstressed teachers, but this felt different. This felt like a promise. But then her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, afraid of what it might say. Instead, it was a photo. Rowan's drawing, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands. Below it, a message. He drew this last night.
He wants you to have it.
Alistair. Mara's eyes burned. That little boy, reaching out in the only way he knew how. trusting her when he trusted so few people. She thought about the note. Stay away from him. Then she thought about Rowan whispering stay with such desperate hope. Mara had spent her childhood being shuffled between homes, never staying long enough to matter to anyone. She knew what it felt like to be abandoned by the people who were supposed to care. She'd sworn she'd never do that to a kid. Not even if it put her in danger. She texted back, "Tell him I love it. See you both at 9. The response came immediately. "Thank you. And Mara, lock your doors. Don't let anyone in you don't know. I'll explain when you get here." So he knew something. Or suspected. That should have scared her more, but instead it was almost a relief. She wasn't crazy. Something was happening. Mara looked at the threatening note again, then deliberately crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. Whatever game this was, whoever was trying to scare her, they'd picked the wrong person. She'd survived 16 foster homes, 3 abusive placements, and aging out of the system with nothing but a high school diploma and determination. She could survive this too. At 8:45 a.m., Mara grabbed her bag and headed for the door. The hallway looked normal in daylight, worn carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of coffee from 3D's apartment.
No sados.
No mysterious figures. But as she locked her door and turned toward the stairs, she felt it again. That sensation of being watched.
Studied.
She spun around. The hallway was empty. Except, was that a flicker of movement at the far end? Near the stairwell door. Mara's heart hammered. Hello. Nothing. She walked quickly to the stairs, not quite running but close. As she pushed through the stairwell door, she glanced back one more time. A figure stood at the end of the hallway now. Tall, wearing a dark hooded cloak that looked like something from another century. The face was hidden in shadow, but she could feel the weight of its stare. The figure didn't move.
Didn't speak.
Just watched her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Then it tilted its head, a gesture that was somehow both curious and threatening, and vanished. Not walked away. Not retreated into an apartment. Vanished. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, like smoke dissipating in wind. Mara stood frozen in the stairwell, her breath coming in short gasps. She hadn't imagined that. She couldn't have. People didn't just disappear into thin air. Unless they weren't people. The thought came unbidden, ridiculous, impossible. But it settled into her mind with the weight of truth. She ran down the stairs, burst out onto the street, and didn't stop moving until she reached her car 3 blocks away. Only then did she let herself breathe, let herself think. What the hell is going on?
Her phone buzzed again.
Another text from Alistair. Are you okay? I can feel. The message cut off, then started again. Never mind. Drive carefully. We need to talk. He could feel.
What?
Feel her panic? Her fear. Mara started her car with shaking hands and pulled into traffic. She had about 1,000 questions and no answers, but one thing was certain. Alistair Thorne knew more than he was saying. And in about 15 minutes, he was going to tell her everything. Or she was walking away, Rowan or no Rowan. She couldn't help anyone if she was too terrified to function. As she drove through the morning traffic, Mara checked her rearview mirror obsessively. No hooded figures.
No sados.
Just normal cars with normal people heading to normal jobs. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed by something she couldn't see. Something that had decided whether she lived or died. And she had no idea which way it would choose. Alistair had chosen Riverside Park for a reason. Open spaces. Multiple exit points. Crowds large enough to blend into, but not so dense that Rowan would be overwhelmed. And most importantly, enough iron in the old Victorian fence posts to make vampire assassins think twice before attacking in broad daylight. Iron didn't kill vampires. That was a myth, but it burned like acid and weakened their abilities. A useful deterrent. He sat on a bench near the small duck pond, Rowan beside him, with his drawing notebook. His son had been calm this morning, almost peaceful, as if he knew Mara was coming. The bond between them was strengthening faster than Alistair had anticipated, which meant they had less time than he'd thought. "She's coming," Rowan said suddenly, looking up from his spirals. "How do you know?" Alistair asked, though he knew the answer. He could feel her too, that warm, steady presence drawing closer. "I just know," Rowan smiled, a rare and precious expression. "She's happy today, but also scared." Alistair's jaw tightened. So Rowan was already sensing her emotions. The empathic bond was active, which meant the council's fears were justified. His son was developing abilities years ahead of schedule, triggered by proximity to mediator blood. And there was nothing Alistair could do to stop it without destroying the only source of peace Rowan had ever known. Mara appeared on the path 5 minutes later, walking quickly, her eyes scanning the park like she expected threats to emerge from behind every tree. When she spotted them, relief flooded her face. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, clothes slightly rumpled like she'd dressed in a hurry. But she smiled when Rowan waved at her, and that smile was genuine. "Hey, buddy," she said, sitting on the bench beside him but maintaining careful distance. She'd learned his boundaries. Working on more spirals. Rowan nodded and turned the notebook to show her. Page after page of intricate geometric patterns, each one perfect and mesmerizing. "These are incredible," Mara breathed. Then she looked at Alistair, and her expression hardened. "We need to talk." "We do," Alistair gestured to the path around the pond. "Walk with me?" Mara hesitated, glancing at Rowan. "Will he be okay?" "I'll be right here," Rowan said, not looking up from his drawing. "I can see you the whole time." She nodded and stood, following Alistair along the gravel path. They walked in silence for a moment, passing joggers and dog walkers, and people who had no idea they were standing 50 feet from a vampire king. "Someone was outside my apartment last night," Mara said finally. "They left a note telling me to stay away from Rowan. Then this morning, I saw someone in my hallway. They disappeared, Mr. Thorne. Just vanished into thin air." Alistair's hands clenched. So the assassin had gotten closer than his people reported. "Did they hurt you?"
No, just watched.
"But I'm not crazy, right? People don't just vanish." "You're not crazy." Alistair stopped walking and turned to face her. "Mara, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. But I need you to listen, and I need you to believe me, because your life depends on it." She crossed her arms, defensive, but listening.
"I'm listening."
There are things in this world that most humans never see. Supernatural creatures that have existed alongside humanity for thousands of years, hidden in plain sight. He watched her face carefully. Vampires. Werewolves. Witches. We're real. Mara stared at him, then laughed, sharp, disbelieving. "You're joking." "I'm not." Alistair pulled down his sunglasses, letting her see his eyes shift from gray to deep crimson. "I'm over 800 years old. I'm a vampire king. And Rowan is my heir." The color drained from Mara's face. She took a step back, then another. You're insane. This is some kind of..." "You saw someone vanish," Alistair interrupted gently. "You felt something when we shook hands. You somehow knew Rowan needed you last night from across the city. You know I'm telling the truth, even if you don't want to believe it." Mara's breathing quickened. If this is real, then why are you telling me? Why risk?" "Because you're in danger. Because the figure you saw was a vampire assassin sent to kill you. And because," Alistair paused, choosing his words carefully, "because you're not entirely human either." "What?" The word came out as a whisper. "Your great-grandmother was part of an ancient bloodline called mediators. Humans bred specifically to serve as diplomatic bridges between vampire nobility and their heirs. Your blood carries an ability to project calm, to pacify supernatural volatility. That's why Rowan responds to you. Why he can speak around you. Why his abilities stabilize in your presence." Mara shook her head, backing away further.
No.
"No, I'm just good with kids. That's all. This is crazy." Mara, look at him.
She turned.
Rowan had stood up from the bench and was walking toward them slowly, his notebook forgotten. His eyes, those same gray eyes his father had, were fixed on Mara with an intensity that seemed far too old for a 7-year-old. Don't be scared, Rowan said softly. You're safe with us. Rowan, stay there. Alistair started, but his son kept walking. He stopped directly in front of Mara and held out his hand. It's okay. I want to show you. Mara looked at Alistair, terrified. Show me what? Your light, Rowan said simply. Before Alistair could stop them, before he could consider the danger of an uncontrolled awakening, Mara's hand reached out and took Rowan's. The world exploded into light. Golden energy erupted from their joined hands, washing over both of them in waves of shimmering radiance. It was invisible to the humans in the park. Alistair knew. They'd see nothing unusual. But to him, to any supernatural creature within a mile radius, it was like a beacon blazing across the city. Mara gasped, her eyes widening. What is this? Your aura, Alistair breathed, transfixed. He'd seen mediator auras before, centuries ago, but never one this powerful. It wasn't just calming, it was harmonizing. Rowan's own emerging aura, chaotic and uncontrolled, was synchronizing with hers, creating patterns of energy that looked like her son's spirals made manifest. I can see it, Rowan whispered, wonder in his voice. Your colors. They're so bright. The light pulsed once more, then faded slowly, sinking back beneath their skin. Mara stumbled backward, and Alistair caught her before she fell. Easy, he murmured. First awakening is always disorienting. I saw Mara's voice was distant, dazed. I saw memories. Not mine. A throne room. Vampires in ceremonial robes. A woman who looked like me, standing between a vampire lord and a child, and everyone was bowing. She focused on Alistair with sudden clarity. That was real. Those were real memories. Ancestral memories, Alistair confirmed. Your bloodline remembering its purpose. And that purpose was to
What?
babysit vampire children? Despite everything, Alistair smiled. More than that, mediators were peacekeepers, diplomats. They could walk between human and vampire worlds and be trusted by both. They were invaluable, sacred even. Then why did you say they're extinct? His smile faded. Because 200 years ago, the Vampire Council decided mediators gave humans too much influence over our kind. They systematically eliminated every known bloodline he met her eyes. They're trying to do the same to you. The reality of it crashed over Mara's face. The assassin. The note. They're not going to stop. No, Alistair agreed. They won't. Then what do we do? It was the we that struck him. She hadn't said, what do I do? Or you need to protect me, she'd said we. As if she'd already accepted that her fate was tied to theirs. The bond was deeper than he'd realized. We run, Alistair said. I have a sanctuary in the mountains. Hidden. Protected. We take Rowan there and you with him until I can find a way to negotiate with the council. Negotiate? Mara laughed bitterly. They want me dead. They want you gone. There's a difference. If I can prove you're essential to Rowan's development, that removing you would harm the heir, he trailed off. It was a long shot and they both knew it. When do we leave? Mara asked.
Tonight.
I'll send someone to pack your things. No, she cut him off. I'll pack my own things. I'm not helpless. Alistair studied her. This fierce, stubborn human woman who just learned the world was far stranger and more dangerous than she'd imagined, and her response was to demand agency. He was beginning to understand why his son had bonded with her. Tonight, then, he agreed. But Mara? From this moment on, you don't go anywhere alone. The awakening you just experienced? Every vampire in the city felt that. They all know what you are now. As if summoned by his words, Rowan suddenly looked up at the sky, his expression going distant. They're coming.
Who?
Mara asked. Everyone, Rowan whispered. And in the distance, barely audible, Alistair heard the first howl. They made it to Alistair's mansion by late afternoon. Not the safe house where Rowan usually stayed, but the real estate, a sprawling Gothic structure on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by 20 acres of forest. It had been in the Thorne family for generations, which was technically true if you counted the same person living under different assumed identities. Mara stood in the marble foyer, staring up at the vaulted ceiling and crystal chandelier. "You live here?" "Sometimes," Alistair said, already moving through the house to check security wards. "It's more defensible than the safe house. Older protections." Rowan had gone straight to his room, one of 6 bedrooms, this one filled with sensory equipment Alistair had collected over the years. Weighted blankets, noise-canceling headphones, textured toys. Everything that might help a child whose senses were being amplified by emerging vampire abilities. "Stay with him," Alistair told Mara. "I need to reinforce the perimeter." "What exactly are we expecting?" Mara asked, and he could hear the barely controlled fear in her voice. She was holding it together remarkably well, but the events of the day were catching up with her. "Honestly, I don't know. The council might wait for nightfall. They might not," he paused at the door. "But after what happened in the park, every supernatural creature in the city knows you're here. Some will be curious. Some will be hostile. And some," he trailed off. "Some will want to use me," Mara finished quietly. "Like your council wants to eliminate me. I'm not stupid, Mr. Thorne. I understand what I've become. A political asset. Or a liability." "You're a person," Alistair said firmly, "who happens to have abilities others want to exploit. There's a difference." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Is there?" Before he could answer, Rowan appeared in the hallway. "Miss Mara, can you help with my routine?" Of course, Mara's expression softened immediately, all that fear and uncertainty tucked away behind professional competence. "What do you need?" As they disappeared into Rowan's room, Alistair felt that now familiar warmth of the bond. He could sense Mara's presence in his house, sense Rowan's calm when she was near. It should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified him. Because Counselor Vex had been right, he was compromised. His judgment was clouded by this connection he didn't fully understand. And if he couldn't think clearly, he couldn't protect them. Alistair spent the next hour strengthening wards, checking weapons caches hidden throughout the mansion and coordinating with his few remaining loyal guards. Most of his security force reported to the council first and him second. He could trust maybe 3 vampires with his life right now. Not great odds. By the time he returned to Rowan's room, evening had settled over the mansion. Mara sat on the floor with his son, helping him with a compression vest, deep pressure therapy that usually calmed his nervous system. She hummed that same low tune from the playground, and Rowan's breathing was slow and even. Peaceful. "He should sleep soon," Mara said softly. "The awakening in the park took a lot out of him." "Me too, if I'm honest," she rubbed her temples. "I feel like I ran a marathon." "Manifesting your aura for the first time is exhausting," Alistair said. "You should rest too." "I don't think I could sleep if I tried," she looked up at him. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those memories. The throne room. The woman who looked like me.
And
there was a child. A vampire child, maybe 5 years old, screaming, and she just touched his forehead, and he stopped.
Just like that.
Like she turned off a switch. That's what mediators did, Alistair explained. Young vampires are volatile, dangerous to themselves and others. Mediators could calm that volatility, help them learn control. Without them, many young vampires didn't survive to adulthood. Is that what's happening with Rowan? He's volatile? He's powerful, Alistair corrected. And yes, without help, that power could consume him. You give him an anchor, a way to channel it safely. Mara was quiet for a long moment. What happens if I die? The blunt question hit harder than any physical blow. Don't. I'm serious. If these assassins succeed, what happens to him? Alistair couldn't answer. Couldn't put into words the fear that kept him awake during the day, that Rowan would lose the only person who'd ever made his world make sense. A sound from downstairs saved him from responding. Glass breaking. A door splintering. Alistair's eyes flashed crimson. Get in the closet with Rowan.
Now.
What? Now, Mara.
She didn't argue.
In seconds, she'd scooped up Rowan, who'd woken at the noise, eyes wide with fear, and disappeared into the large walk-in closet. Alistair heard her whisper, "It's okay, buddy. We're just playing hide and seek." Rowan's small voice, "That's not a game. Someone bad is here." Smart boy. Too smart. Alistair moved to the bedroom door just as a figure appeared in the hallway. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the formal military uniform of the Council's Enforcement Division. General Marcus Kane, one of the 7 assassins who answered directly to the elders. Alistair, Marcus's voice was gravelly, emotionless. "Step aside. Leave my house, Marcus. The Council has issued an order. The mediator is to be taken into custody for evaluation. The prince as well, until his stability can be assessed. Rowan is not going anywhere, and neither is Mara." This isn't a negotiation. Marcus moved with supernatural speed, crossing the hallway in a blur. Alistair met him halfway. They collided with the force of a car crash, slamming into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Marcus was strong, ancient, powerful, a warrior who'd survived countless battles. But Alistair was a king. They fought with brutal efficiency, no wasted movements, each strike designed to kill. Alistair blocked a blow that would have shattered his skull, countered with a strike to Marcus's throat. The general stumbled back, hissing. "You're protecting a human over your own kind," Marcus spat. "The council was right about you. You're weak. I'm protecting my son, by binding him to a mortal who'll die in a blink." Marcus laughed coldly. "What happens in 60 years when she's dust, and he's still mourning her? You're not saving him. You're condemning him to grief." The words struck a nerve, because they were true. Alistair had thought about it constantly. Mara would age, would die, and Rowan would lose her. But that was 60 years away. Right now, she kept his son alive and sane. "Get out," Alistair said quietly. "Before I forget we once fought together." Too late for that, Marcus lunged again. Faster this time, using a technique that would put him past Alistair's defenses and directly at the closet door. Alistair tried to intercept, but Marcus was a fraction faster. The closet door burst open. Mara stepped out, placing herself directly in Marcus's path. The general's hand was already raised to strike, momentum carrying him forward, unable to stop. And then light exploded through the room. Mara's aura manifested instinctively, a defensive response she didn't know she had. Golden energy erupted from her body like a shockwave, slamming into Marcus with physical force. The general flew backward, crashing into the opposite wall hard enough to leave a crater in the drywall. He slumped to the floor, stunned, staring at Mara with something that looked like awe or fear. "Don't touch him." Mara's voice rang with authority she didn't know she possessed. Her eyes were glowing, actually glowing, with that same golden light. "Rowan is under my protection." Marcus scrambled to his feet, and for the first time in 2 centuries, Alistair saw genuine fear on the general's face. "What are you?" "Something you forgot existed," Mara said. Her voice was still hers, but layered with something older. Ancestral memories, speaking through her. The council broke sacred law when they eliminated the mediator lines. We were not theirs to destroy.
You're
fully awakened," Marcus whispered. He looked at Alistair. "She manifested combat protocols. That's impossible. It takes years of training." "Apparently not," Alistair said, equally shocked. The golden light faded slowly, and Mara swayed. Alistair caught her before she collapsed, lifting her easily. Behind her, in the closet, Rowan watched with those ancient eyes. "She protected me," his son said softly. "Her light protected me." Marcus backed toward the door, one hand pressed to his chest where Mara's aura had struck him. The council needs to know about this. She's not just mediator blood, she's a weapon. Tell them, Alistair said coldly. Tell them that if they send anyone else, I'll consider it an act of war. Marcus fled. Alistair carried Mara to the bed, laying her down gently. She was unconscious, breathing shallow. Using that much power without training should have killed her, but instead she was merely depleted. The mediator bloodline was stronger than any of them had realized. Rowan climbed onto the bed beside her, curling up against her side. She'll be okay, right? Yes, Alistair said, though he wasn't entirely sure. She'll be okay. But he knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed. The council couldn't eliminate Mara now, not when she'd demonstrated power that defied their understanding. Which meant they'd try something worse. They'd try to control her. Mara woke to the smell of old books and something else, something ancient and dusty, like time itself had a scent. She sat up slowly, head pounding. She was on a velvet couch in what looked like a library, but not any library she'd ever seen. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, shelves upon shelves of books rising so high they disappeared into shadow. Ladders on rails. Dim lighting from sconces that looked like they should hold candles, but glowed with steady electric light. You're awake, Alistair appeared from between two towering shelves, carrying a leather-bound book that looked older than the country. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, Mara rubbed her temples. Memories flooded back. The mansion, the fight, Marcus, and then…
Light.
So much light. Did I really throw a vampire general across the room? You did. Alistair sat in the chair across from her, a hint of a smile on his face. Quite impressively, actually. Marcus has been in combat for over 300 years. You dropped him in seconds. Where's Rowan? Safe. With my most trusted guard at a secondary location. I wanted you conscious before I moved him again. Alistair set the book on the table between them. We need to talk. Really talk. About what you are and what that means. Mara looked around the strange library. Where are we? Beneath the city. This archive has existed for over 400 years, hidden under what humans think is an old public library. It's neutral ground, no council authority here. The archivists serve knowledge, not politics. He opened the ancient book, and Mara saw handwritten text in languages she didn't recognize. This is the record of mediator lines. Every family, every generation, documented for centuries. Mara leaned forward despite herself. My family is in there. Your great-grandmother, specifically Alistair, turned pages carefully, stopping on one filled with elegant script and a hand-drawn family tree. At the bottom, a name jumped out at her. Eleanor Chen, born in 1889 d. 1952. Eleanor, Mara whispered. She'd heard that name once, from a social worker reviewing her file. A great-grandmother who died when Mara's grandmother was a teenager. That was all she knew. Eleanor Chen was one of the last trained mediators, Alistair said quietly. She served the House of Thorn, actually. My house. She was assigned to help stabilize a volatile young vampire heir, my younger brother, David. Mara's head snapped up. You had a brother? Pain flickered across Alistair's face. He didn't survive. He was too powerful, too unstable. Eleanor tried, but by the time she was assigned to him, it was too late. He destroyed himself in a rage spiral when he was 16 and he paused. 3 years later, the council voted to eliminate all mediator lines. They blamed Eleanor for failing to save David. Used it as proof that mediators were unreliable. That's insane, Mara said. One failure doesn't mean. It wasn't about logic. It was about control. Alistair turned another page, showing a list of names.
Dozens of them.
All marked with the same notation, terminated 1825. They systematically hunted down every mediator family, killed the trained adults, scattered the children before their abilities could manifest. Eleanor escaped with her daughter, your grandmother, and went into hiding. She never trained again, never used her abilities. She wanted her family to survive more than she wanted to serve. Mara traced the names with her finger. All these people, murdered for being what they were. How did they miss me? They didn't know you existed. Eleanor kept her daughter away from vampire society entirely. Your grandmother never manifested abilities, which isn't uncommon. The gift can skip generations. When Eleanor died, the council assumed the bloodline was extinct. He looked at her intently. Until you touched Rowan in that park. So I'm what? The last one? As far as we know, there might be others hiding, suppressing their abilities like Eleanor did. But active, trained, powerful. He gestured to her. You're unique. And that makes you incredibly valuable. Or incredibly dead, Mara said bitterly. I won't let that happen. You can't promise that, but even as she said it, she felt that warmth, that connection between them. The bond. What is this thing between us? I can feel you even now. Your emotions. You're worried. Guilty about something. Alistair's jaw tightened. The mediator bond doesn't just connect you to the heir. It connects you to the heir's primary protector. Historically, that was usually the father. The bond creates a resonance. A way for all three parties to communicate beyond words, to sense each other's needs. So, I'm bonded to you too. Yes. Mara sat back, processing. That's why you said you could feel me yesterday. When I was panicking in my apartment.
Yes.
And it's why the council is even more determined to separate us. Historically, mediator bonds have led to complications. Political complications. What kind of complications? Alistair stood and walked to the window, Real glass looking out onto what appeared to be an underground courtyard, lit by bioluminescent fungi. Mediators weren't just caregivers.
They were diplomats.
Advisors. In some cases, they married into vampire nobility, creating hybrid bloodlines that threaten traditional power structures. He turned back to her. The council fears you'll influence me, that I'll make decisions based on the bond rather than what's best for our kind. Will you? The question hung between them. I don't know, Alistair admitted. 3 days ago, I would have said no. I'm 800 years old. I've ruled through wars, plagues, political coups. I don't make emotional decisions. He met her eyes. But then I watched you protect my son. Watched you throw yourself between him and a trained killer without hesitation. And I realized that maybe emotional decisions aren't always wrong. Mara's breath caught. There was something in his gaze, something that went beyond the bond, beyond politics. Something human despite what he was. She stood, closing the distance between them. I need to know something. Am I here because of this bond? Because of some magical compulsion? Or because you genuinely believe I can help Rowan? Both, Alistair said honestly. The bond makes me protective of you, makes me want to keep you close. But I wanted you close before the bond manifested. From the first day I saw you with Rowan, I knew you were different. Special. The bond just confirmed what I already knew. And what about me? Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. Do I have a choice in this? Or am I just programmed to care about him? About you? Mediator bonds don't create emotions that aren't already there, a new voice said from the doorway. An elderly woman stepped into the lamplight, human, surprisingly, with white hair and sharp eyes. They amplify and clarify what already exists. If you didn't genuinely care for that boy, no amount of magical resonance would make you throw yourself in front of an assassin. This is Archivist Helena, Alistair introduced. She's one of the few humans who knows about our world and has devoted her life to preserving its history. Helena moved to the table and touched the page showing Eleanor's name with reverence. I knew your great-grandmother. Briefly, before she went into hiding. She was extraordinary.
Fierce.
Uncompromising. She told the council to their faces that they were cowards for blaming her for what they couldn't control. The old woman smiled. You have her eyes. And, apparently, her courage. I don't feel courageous, Mara admitted. I feel terrified. That's what courage is, child. Being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. Helena pulled another book from a shelf, this one even older. The council wants you to believe that mediators were servants. Subordinates. But that's revisionist history. The truth is, Mediators held power equal to vampire nobility. They could refuse service, could walk away from assignments, could even challenge vampire lords who abused their heirs. She opened the book to show elaborate illustrations, ceremonies where mediators stood on raised platforms, vampires kneeling before them. They weren't slaves. They were sacred, and the council destroyed them because they feared losing control. Mara stared at the images.
Power.
Respect.
Authority.
Everything she'd never had in her human life, this bloodline had possessed in abundance. "So what do I do?" she asked. "The council wants to control me or kill me. I can't exactly go back to my normal life. And Rowan needs me." "You do what Eleanor should have been allowed to do," Helena said firmly. "You claim your heritage. You demand recognition under the old laws, laws that predate the council's authority. And you protect that boy with everything you have." "The old laws haven't been invoked in 200 years, Alistair said. "The council won't honor them." "Then you make them," Helena looked at him pointedly. "You're a king, aren't you? Act like 1 inch." The word struck something in Alistair's expression. A decision forming. He turned to Mara. "There's one way to protect you that the council can't dispute. It's ancient, rarely used, but legally binding under vampire law." "What is it?" "I formally designate you as Rowan's guardian of the air. It's a title that predates the council, protected by laws written when mediators were still valued. Once claimed, you'd be under my direct protection and authority. The council couldn't touch you without declaring war on my house. What's the catch? You'd be bound to us.
Permanently.
Your life would be dedicated to Rowan's care and development. You couldn't leave.
Couldn't walk away.
And you'd be a target for anyone who wanted to hurt my family." Mara thought about her apartment.
Her old job.
The life she'd been living 3 days ago, lonely, purposeless, just surviving. Then she thought about Rowan's smile when she sat with him. The way his world made sense when she was near. The fierce protectiveness she felt when that general tried to hurt him. "How do we do it?" she asked. Alistair's eyes widened. "You're sure?" "I've never been sure of anything in my life. But Rowan needs me. And honestly, I think I need him too," she smiled sadly. "I spent my whole life looking for somewhere to belong. Maybe this is it." "Then we go to the sanctuary," Alistair said. "And we make it official." Outside, in the darkness of the archive, neither of them noticed the shadow that detached from the wall and slipped away silently. The council would know within the hour. And they would not be pleased. The Child Protective Services agents arrived at 9 a.m. the next morning. Alistair had just enough warning, a text from one of his human contacts at City Hall, to get everyone presentable. Rowan in normal clothes instead of his compression vest. The mansion's more obviously supernatural artifacts hidden away. Mara positioned as a behavioral specialist, rather than what she was becoming. 2 agents stood at the door. A tired-looking woman in her 50s named Janet Reeves and a younger man with suspicious eyes named Derek Cho. "Mr. Thorne?" Janet held up identification. "We received a report of potential child endangerment. We need to conduct a welfare check on Rowan Thorne." Alistair's jaw tightened. "From whom?"
Anonymous tip.
That's all I can say, but Derek's expression suggested he believed the report was credible. "May we come in?" "Of course." Alistair stepped aside, mind racing.
Anonymous tip.
After last night's confrontation with Marcus, the council was using human authorities now, clever and cowardly. If CPS found anything concerning, they could remove Rowan from his care, place him in the system. Somewhere Alistair couldn't protect him, where the council could access him easily. Mara appeared from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, playing her role perfectly. "Good morning. I'm Mara Chen, Rowan's behavioral therapist." "Therapist." Derek pulled out a tablet. "Are you licensed?" "I'm working under supervision toward my certification. Mr. Thorne has been generous enough to sponsor my training while I work with Rowan." She smiled, warm and professional. "He's a wonderful kid. Very bright. We'd like to see him," Janet said, softer than her partner. just to verify he's safe and healthy. He's in his room, Alistair said. But I should warn you, Rowan is autistic and doesn't do well with strangers. Sudden visits can be triggering. We're trained to work with special needs children, Derek said, an edge to his voice. Like he thought Alistair was making excuses. They climbed the stairs, Mara and Alistair exchanging worried glances. Through the bond, Alistair could feel her anxiety spiking. He sent back a pulse of reassurance and saw her shoulders relax slightly. The bond was getting stronger, more intuitive. Rowan's room was exactly as they'd left it. Sensory toys organized on shelves, weighted blankets, a corner with soft pillows where he could retreat when overwhelmed. Rowan himself sat at his desk, drawing those endless spirals. He looked up when they entered, and Alistair saw his son's eyes widen with alarm.
Too many people.
Unknown faces. The energy in the room shifted, static electricity crackling faintly.
No, not now.
Hey, buddy, Mara said quickly, moving to his side. Her presence immediately dampened the supernatural charge. These nice people just want to talk to you for a minute. Is that okay? Rowan's hands gripped his pencil so hard it threatened to snap. He looked at Alistair, then back to Mara, breathing quickening. Rowan. Janet approached slowly, crouching to his level. My name is Janet. I work for an organization that makes sure kids are happy and safe. Can you tell me if you're happy here? Silence. Rowan's breathing was getting faster. It's okay if you can't talk right now, Janet continued gently. You can nod or shake your head. Are you happy living with your dad? Rowan nodded, but his hands were shaking. Derek circled the room, taking notes. These locks on the windows. Why are they there? Safety measure, Alistair said evenly. Rowan has night terror sometimes. I need to know he can't wander outside in a dissociative state. Looks more like you're keeping him prisoner. Looks like you're more interested in finding problems than helping a child, Alistair countered, his voice dropping to that dangerous register that made humans instinctively nervous. Derek took a step back before catching himself. We're just being thorough. Rowan, Janet tried again. Do you ever feel scared in this house? The boy's eyes locked on hers, and something ancient flickered behind his 7-year-old face. When he spoke, his voice was strained. I'm scared right now. Of what, honey? Of me. The lights flickered. One of the bulbs in the overhead fixture exploded, raining glass. Both agents jumped back. Electrical problems, Alistair said quickly. Old house. Old wiring. I've been meaning to call an electrician. But another bulb shattered. Then another. Rowan's breathing had escalated to gasping, his hands clutching his head. Too loud. Too many. Make it stop. Everyone out, Mara said firmly.
Now.
He's having a sensory overload. We can't just leave, Derek started. Out. Mara's voice carried authority that made both agents obey without thinking. They backed toward the door as she turned to Rowan. Eyes on me, buddy.
Just me.
Nobody else. But Rowan was too far gone. His abilities were manifesting uncontrolled. Books flew off shelves, the desk rattled, and a crack appeared in the wall. His eyes had shifted from gray to that crimson that betrayed his vampire heritage. The agents couldn't see it in the chaos, but Alistair could. His son was seconds from a full manifestation that would expose everything. Rowan, no. Alistair moved forward. Mara grabbed his arm. Let me. She stepped directly in front of Rowan, blocking the agent's view, and placed both hands on either side of his face. Her touch released a wave of golden light, visible only to supernatural sight, that washed over the boy like warm water. Breathe with me, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos.
In.
2, 3, 4.
Out.
2, 3, 4 inch. She breathed deliberately, exaggerated, making it easy to follow. Rowan's eyes locked on hers, and slowly, so slowly, his breathing began to match hers. That's it. You're safe. I'm here. Your dad's here. These people are just worried about you, but you're okay. You're always okay, when we're together. The object stopped flying. The cracks in the walls ceased spreading. Rowan's eyes faded back to gray, and he slumped forward into Mara's arms, exhausted. She held him, one hand on his back, maintaining that steady breathing pattern. There we go. All done. You did so good, buddy. Behind them, Janet and Derek stood frozen in the doorway. The room was trashed, glass everywhere, books scattered, furniture overturned. But to them, it just looked like the tantrum of an overwhelmed child. I think, Janet said carefully, we have what we need. You're leaving? Derek sounded incredulous. Look at this room. This is a child with sensory processing disorder having a meltdown, Janet interrupted, which is documented in his medical file. And this young woman handled it perfectly. She looked at Mara with something like respect. You're good at your job, Miss Chen. Thank you, Mara said, still holding Rowan. Janet turned to Alistair. Mr. Thorne, I'm going to recommend we close this case. Anonymous tips are often unreliable, and I can see Rowan is well cared for. The house is safe, he has appropriate therapeutic support, and he's clearly bonded with his caregiver. But Derek tried to object.
Close. The
case. Janet's tone left no room for argument. She handed Alistair a card. If you need any resources or support services, please call. Raising a special needs child isn't easy, but you're doing well. After they left, Alistair watched them from the window. Derek was arguing with Janet, gesturing back at the house. But Janet was shaking her head firmly, already walking to their car. They'll be back, Mara said quietly, still holding Rowan. Whoever sent them won't stop with one failed attempt. I know, Alistair turned from the window. Which means we need to move faster. The sanctuary. Tonight? Mara looked down at Rowan, who'd fallen asleep in her arms, emotionally exhausted. Is he strong enough? He's stronger with you, Alistair met her eyes. We all are. Through the bond, he felt her acceptance. Her resolve. She was all in now, no more hesitation, no more doubt. She'd chosen them. Chosen this life. What about my apartment? My things. Already packed and in transit. My people are thorough, he smiled slightly. You didn't think I'd wait for your permission, did you? Control freak, she muttered, but there's affection in it. 800 years of leadership will do that. Mara carried Rowan to his bed, tucking him in with practiced ease. She hummed that low tune, and the boy's sleep deepened, peaceful. Thank you, Alistair said softly, for what you did just now. You saved him. That's what guardians do, right? Mara smiled, but there was steel beneath it. Protect their charges. No matter what. Even from the world's authorities. Even from the world. Outside, neither of them noticed the unmarked van parked 3 houses down. Inside, Derek Cho reviewed footage on his phone, shaky, unclear, but showing objects flying through Rowan's room with no one touching them. He forwarded it to a number his supervisor had given him months ago. A special task force that investigated unusual circumstances involving children. Within minutes, he received a response. Maintain surveillance. Report all anomalies. Do not engage directly. Derek put his phone away, watching the mansion. Whatever was happening in that house, it wasn't just special needs care. And he was going to find out what. Mara fell asleep on the couch in Alistair's study while he made preparations for their departure. She didn't mean to. There was too much to do, too much adrenaline still coursing through her system. But exhaustion won, pulling her under like a riptide. The dream came immediately. She stood in a throne room carved from black stone, lit by torches that burned with crimson flames. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, and the walls were decorated with tapestries showing battles between creatures that shouldn't exist. A vampire sat on the throne, ancient, powerful, with eyes like burning coals. Beside him stood a human woman who looked so much like Mara they could have been twins. But this woman wore elaborate robes marked with golden symbols, and when she moved, the air shimmered around her. The child is stable. The woman, Eleanor, Mara knew somehow reported. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. His abilities are manifesting on schedule. By his 10th year, he should have full control. Thanks to you, Mediator Chin. The vampire's voice was deep, resonant with age and power. House Blackwood owes you a debt. I require no debt, Lord Blackwood. I serve the ancient laws, not individual houses. Eleanor's tone was respectful but firm. Though I would ask that you honor your treaty with the human settlements. Your hunters have been overzealous. The vampire's expression darkened. You overstep. I speak truth. That is my right as mediator. Eleanor's aura flared. That same golden light Mara had manifested, but stronger, more controlled. The boy you've entrusted to me will rule one day. What kind of king will he be if he's raised to see humans as prey rather than partners? Silence. Then the vampire laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You're brave, Eleanor Chen. Or foolish. I haven't decided which. Brave, Eleanor said simply. Always brave. Never foolish. The scene shifted, flowing like water into something darker. Eleanor running through a burning building, clutching a small girl, maybe 3 years old, to her chest. Behind her, screams. The clash of weapons. The wet sound of violence. They're killing everyone, someone shouted. The council issued the order. No mediators can survive. Eleanor burst through a door into an alley. Rain poured down, mixing with the smoke and blood. She pressed the child into the arms of a human man. Her husband? Brother.
Take her.
Get as far from vampire society as you can. Never tell her what she is. Never let her manifest. Eleanor's face was streaked with tears. Promise me. Eleanor, come with us. I'll only draw them to you.
Go. Now.
The man fled with the child as Eleanor turned back to face the vampires emerging from the burning building. Her aura blazed to life, golden and defiant. You want a mediator? She shouted. Come take one. The last thing Mara saw was Eleanor's face, fierce, unafraid, accepting, before the vampires descended. The dream shifted again, faster now, images blurring together. A young woman, Eleanor's daughter, living in a small apartment, never using abilities she didn't know she had. That woman's daughter, Mara's mother, sick, dying young, leaving a baby girl to the foster system. And then Mara herself, bouncing between homes, always feeling like she didn't quite fit, always sensing emotions too strongly, always drawn to the lost and broken because she was lost and broken too. Until 3 days ago. Until a 7-year-old boy with ancient eyes had whispered, stay. Until everything changed. The final image was different from the memories. This was a vision, something that hadn't happened yet. Mara stood in that same throne room, but it was ruins now. The tapestries burned, the throne shattered, and in the center of the destruction, Rowan knelt, his small body racked with sobs, power radiating from him in waves that were tearing the room apart. I can't control it, he cried. It hurts. Everything hurts. Mara walked toward him, unafraid of the energy that would kill anyone else. She knelt and took his hands. Then don't control it, she said. Let it flow through me.
I can handle it.
That's what I'm for. Her aura merged with his, golden and crimson spiraling together like the drawings he loved so much. The destructive energy became something else. Something beautiful, balanced,
whole.
You saved me, Rowan whispered, older now. Maybe 10, maybe 12. You always save me. That's what family does. Mara woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright on the couch. Her face was wet with tears. Her hands were glowing, that faint golden shimmer that meant her aura was active. Mara? Alistair was beside her in an instant. What's wrong? I saw her. Eleanor. My great-grandmother. The words tumbled out. She died protecting others like me. She died so her daughter, so I could survive. Mara looked at her glowing hands. And I've been hiding what I am my whole life without even knowing it. The ancestral memories are integrating, Alistair said softly. Your bloodline is waking up completely. What else did you see?
Rowan.
older, in danger. And she trailed off, uncertain how to explain. You saved him, Alistair finished. Because that's what you do. How did you know? Because I've studied mediator history for centuries. The visions always show the same thing, the moment when the bond becomes permanent. When saving them becomes more important than your own life. His expression was complicated. Mara, you need to understand what you're accepting. The guardian ceremony tonight. Once it's done, you won't be able to walk away. The bond will be complete. Your life and Rowan's will be intertwined on a fundamental level. I know.
Do you?
Because if something happens to him, you'll feel it like it's happening to you.
His pain will be your pain.
And if you die, he couldn't finish the sentence. He'll feel it, Mara said quietly, like losing a piece of himself.
Yes.
And he's already been through so much. If you change your mind later, if you decide this life is too hard. I won't, Mara stood, her hands still glowing faintly. I spent my whole life alone, Alistair, moving from place to place, never mattering to anyone. And then I met a little boy who needed me, and for the first time ever, I felt like I had a purpose. She met his eyes. I'm not walking away. Not now. Not ever. Through the bond, Alistair felt her certainty. Unshakable.
Complete.
Eleanor would be proud of you, he said softly. Eleanor died fighting vampires who wanted to eliminate people like us. Mara's expression hardened. I don't plan on dying. I plan on making sure the council understands that mediators aren't victims anymore. We're survivors. And we're done hiding. A slow smile spread across Alistair's face. Dangerous words.
Good.
Let them be scared of me for once. A knock at the study door. One of Alistair's guards, Marcus. A different Marcus, younger and loyal. Sire, the vehicles are ready. We should leave within the hour to reach the sanctuary by dawn. Thank you. Alistair turned back to Mara. There's something I should tell you before we go. About the ceremony. What about it? It requires blood. Yours, mine, and Rowan's. Mixed and bound by ancient words.
It's
intimate.
permanent.
And once done, anyone with supernatural sight will be able to see the bond connecting us. We'll be marked as a family unit. All three of us.
Yes.
King, heir, and guardian. The original triad from when vampire and human societies worked together, he paused. The council will see it as a direct challenge to their authority. Good, Mara said again, and this time Alistair laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. You know, when I first saw you on that playground, I thought you were just a kind human who happened to be good with my son. And now I think you might be the most dangerous person I've ever met. And I've met a lot of dangerous people. Mara smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. As they prepared to leave, Mara caught her reflection in a mirror. For just a second, she could swear she saw someone else standing behind her, a woman who looked like her, wearing those ancient robes, smiling with pride. Well done, great-granddaughter, a voice whispered in her mind. Now show them what mediators are truly capable of. The image faded, but the voice remained, echoing in her ancestral memories. Eleanor Chun had died protecting her family's future. Mara Chun would live to ensure that future became reality. No matter what it cost. They almost made it out of the city. Almost. Alistair drove the armored SUV himself, Rowan asleep in the back seat beside Mara. 2 escort vehicles flanked them, one ahead, one behind. The route to the mountain sanctuary was planned down to the minute, avoiding major highways where they'd be exposed. They'd made it 40 miles when the lead vehicle exploded. The blast lit up the night, flipping the SUV end over end. Alistair slammed the brakes, swerving to avoid the wreckage. Behind them, the second escort vehicle tried to reverse, but figures dropped from the overpass above. 6, 7, 8 of them. All vampires. All moving with the lethal precision of trained killers. Stay in the car, Alistair ordered, already reaching for the weapons hidden beneath his seat. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Alistair. Mara started, but he was already gone, moving with supernatural speed into the chaos. Through the tinted windows, Mara watched him fight. It was nothing like movies made it seem, no dramatic posing, no wasted movement. Just brutal, efficient violence. Alistair moved like death itself, cutting through attackers with a blade that gleamed silver in the firelight. But there were too many. Even a vampire king couldn't fight 8 trained assassins alone. One broke away from the main fight, running straight for the SUV. "Rowan, wake up," Mara shook the boy gently. "We need to move." His eyes snapped open, instantly alert. Bad people? Very bad people. The assassin reached the vehicle and ripped the door off its hinges, literally tore the metal away like paper. A woman, pale and beautiful and utterly cold. Her eyes were crimson, pupils vertical like a cat's. "The mediator," she hissed. "You're coming with us." Like hell, Mara threw herself over Rowan, shielding him with her body. The vampire grabbed Mara's ankle and pulled, dragging her out of the SUV with inhuman strength. Mara hit the asphalt hard, pain exploding through her shoulder. The vampire loomed over her, fangs extended. "The council wants you alive," the assassin said. But they didn't specify in how many pieces. She reached down, and golden light exploded from Mara's hands, striking the vampire square in the chest. The assassin flew backward 20 feet, hitting the concrete barrier with enough force to crack it. Mara scrambled to her feet, her aura blazing around her like armor. "Get away from him." 3 more vampires detached from the fight with Alistair, surrounding her. They moved in a coordinated pattern, hunters who'd done this before. "Impressive," one of them said, "but untrained. You don't even know what you're doing." He was right. Mara's aura flickered and pulsed erratically. She had power but no control.
No technique.
Against 3 trained killers, she'd last maybe 30 seconds. "Mara," Rowan's voice from the SUV. "Remember the breathing." The breathing. The pattern she'd taught him to calm his meltdowns. Mara forced herself to breathe, in for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. Her aura steadied, brightening. She felt the ancestral memories stir, Eleanor's knowledge rising to the surface. "Don't fight them head-on. You're not a warrior. You're a shield." The assassins attacked simultaneously. Mara didn't try to strike back. Instead, she projected her aura outward in a dome, creating a barrier between them and the SUV.
Between them and Rowan.
The vampires slammed into it like hitting a wall. One recoiled with a hiss, smoke rising from where his hand had touched the golden energy. "Iron touched," he spat. "Her aura carries iron resonance. How is that possible?" "Eleanor's lines specialized in defensive techniques," another answered. "They were trained to protect royal heirs from anything. Then we go through the king first." They abandoned Mara and rushed back toward Alistair, who was now fighting 6 opponents at once. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, moving slower. Even vampire healing had limits. Mara's barrier flickered. She couldn't maintain it and help Alistair simultaneously. She had to choose, protect Rowan or save Alistair. The bond made the decision for her. She felt Alistair's pain through their connection, felt his strength failing. If he fell, they'd all fall. The assassins would take Rowan and kill her, or worse, deliver them both to the council. "I'm sorry, buddy." She thought toward Rowan, then dropped the barrier and ran toward the fight. "Alistair." He turned at her voice, a mistake. One of the assassins got inside his guard, driving a wooden stake toward his heart. Alistair twisted, but he was too slow, too injured. Mara crashed into him from the side, tackling him out of the way. The stake meant for his heart pierced her shoulder instead, driving deep into muscle and bone. She screamed. The world exploded. Alistair felt Mara's pain through the bond like someone had driven a spike through his own body. Rage, ancient, primal, absolute, consumed him. His eyes blazed crimson, brighter than they'd been in centuries. Power radiated from him in waves that made the assassin stumble back. "You hurt her," he said, his voice echoing with centuries of command. "You hurt her." What happened next wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Alistair moved faster than the eye could track, his blade singing through the air. The assassin who'd stabbed Mara lost his head before he could scream. 2 others fell in the next 3 seconds. The remaining attackers tried to flee, but Alistair was everywhere, blocking every escape route, cutting them down with merciless efficiency. Within 2 minutes, all 8 assassins lay dead or dying on the highway. Alistair dropped to his knees beside Mara, who was still conscious, but pale, blood soaking her shirt around the wooden stake. "Don't pull it out," she gasped. "I've seen enough medical training to know. I have to." Alistair's hands were shaking, actually shaking. "It's wood. Toxic to supernatural bonds. Every second it's in you, it's poisoning the connection. It's just a shoulder wound. You're bonded to me now. What hurts you hurts Rowan. Can you feel him?" Mara closed her eyes and gasped. Through the bond, she could feel Rowan's terror, his pain, as if he'd been stabbed too. "Oh God. Oh God, I didn't know." On 3, Alistair gripped the stake. 1. He pulled it out on 1, not giving her time to brace. Mara's scream echoed across the empty highway. But the moment the wood was removed, golden light flooded the wound. Her aura, responding automatically to injury, knitting tissue and sealing blood vessels. Not as fast as vampire healing, but faster than human. "That's new," Mara panted. Mediator auras protect themselves. And those they're bonded to. Alistair looked toward the SUV where Rowan was climbing out, tears streaming down his face. "Rowan, stay." But the boy ran to them, throwing his arms around Mara. "You got hurt. You got hurt saving Dad." "I'm okay, buddy." Mara held him with her good arm. "Just a scratch." "Don't lie," Rowan pulled back, his gray eyes ancient and knowing. "I felt it. It hurts so much." "I know." "I'm sorry," Mara cupped his face. "But your dad is safe. That's what matters." "You both matter," Rowan said fiercely. Then, to Alistair, "Why do people keep trying to hurt us?" Alistair had no good answer. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that ancient vampires feared change? That power structures built over centuries would kill to maintain control? "Because we're challenging very old rules," he said finally. "Rules that some people think should never change." "That's stupid." Rowan looked at the bodies scattered across the highway. "Are they all dead?" "Yes." "Good." No hesitation. No fear. Just cold acceptance. "They try to hurt my family." "My family." The words hit Alistair like a physical blow. "Not you and Miss Mara, my family." The bond was complete. Had been even before the ceremony. These 3 broken, dangerous, impossible people had become something the vampire world hadn't seen in 200 years. A true triad. The sound of sirens in the distance made them move. Alistair scooped up Mara despite her protests, carrying her to the intact SUV. "We need to go. Human police will be here in minutes." "What about the bodies?" Mara asked. "My people will clean it up. Make it look like a gang shooting. The supernatural world has protocols for this." They drove in silence for 20 minutes, taking back roads into the mountains. Rowan fell asleep almost immediately, emotionally exhausted. Mara pressed a cloth to her shoulder, which was still healing slowly. "Thank you," Alistair said quietly, "for saving my life. You saved mine first." Multiple times, Mara smiled weakly. "I think we're even." "Not even close," he glanced at her. "What you did back there, throwing yourself between me and that stake, that was the kind of loyalty that can't be bought or forced. You chose it." "Of course I did." She trailed off, suddenly awkward. "You're important. To Rowan. To me." Through the bond, Alistair felt what she couldn't quite say. The feelings growing between them that went beyond supernatural connection. Dangerous feelings, complicated feelings, feelings that could destroy them if the council learned just how deep the bond went. "We're almost there," he said, changing the subject. "The sanctuary is just beyond that ridge." Mara looked out at the mountains rising against the starlit sky. "And then what?" "Then we make you untouchable," Alistair's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The council sent 8 assassins. We kill them all. They'll send more, stronger ones, unless we end this permanently. How? By doing what they fear most. He glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping son. By reviving the Guardian tradition and daring them to challenge it in front of the entire supernatural community. If they try to kill you after that, it becomes an act of war against ancient law. They'll lose support, possibly lose power. And if they don't care about ancient law, then we fight. Alistair's eyes met hers. All of us. Together. Mara nodded slowly. Together. The sanctuary appeared ahead, a massive stone structure built into the mountain itself, hidden by wards and natural terrain. It had been here for over 1,000 years, a place where vampire royalty came to perform ceremonies too old for the modern world. Tonight, it would see the rebirth of something the council thought they'd destroyed forever. And nothing would ever be the same. The sanctuary was older than anything Mara had ever seen. Stone corridors carved by hands that had been dust for centuries. Torches that burned with flames that never consumed their fuel. And at the heart of it all, a circular chamber with a raised platform and symbols etched into every surface. Vampire script mixed with human languages long forgotten. This is where the old ceremonies were performed, Alistair explained, his voice echoing in the vast space. When our kinds worked together instead of hiding from each other. Mara touched one of the symbols and felt warmth pulse through her fingers. Recognition. Her bloodline remembered this place. How many guardians were made here? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Over the centuries, Alistair began lighting candles around the platform, their glow revealing more intricate carvings. The last was in 1821, for years before the council eliminated the mediator lines. Rowan stood in the center of the platform, staring up at the domed ceiling where constellations had been carved into stone. He looked small in the vast space, but his presence felt larger somehow. Ancient. Are you scared? Mara asked him, climbing the steps to stand beside him. No, he took her hand. I can feel it. This place is happy we're here. It's been waiting. Mara glanced at Alistair, who nodded. Sacred spaces hold memory. This sanctuary has been dormant for 2 centuries. It recognizes what we're about to do. Then let's do it. Mara's shoulder still ached, but the wound had closed completely. Her aura hummed beneath her skin, ready. Before the council finds us. They won't interrupt. Alistair joined them on the platform. I've activated wards that haven't been used in lifetimes. To break through them would require the entire council attacking simultaneously. And even then, he smiled grimly. This place has defenses they've forgotten about. He pulled out a ceremonial dagger, silver blade, obsidian handle, covered in more of those ancient symbols. This will hurt, but only for a moment. I've been stabbed with a wooden stake tonight, Mara said. I can handle a ritual cut. Alistair held out his hand, palm up, and drew the blade across it. Blood welled, dark and rich. He offered the blade to Mara, who took it with steady hands and mirrored his cut. Her blood was bright red, distinctly human, but when it touched the stone platform, golden light flickered at the edges. Rowan. Alistair knelt before his son. Just a small cut like we talked about. Can you be brave? I'm always brave with you. Rowan held out his small hand. And, Miss Mara, the blade pressed to his palm, the gentlest touch, and a single drop of blood emerged. But that drop glowed with mixed light, crimson vampire heritage and gold mediator resonance, swirling together like Rowan's spirals. Join hands, Alistair instructed. Form a triangle. They did 3 points of a triangle, their bleeding palms pressed together. Blood mixed, power flowing between them. The symbols on the platform blazed to life, light racing along the carved channels. Alistair began to speak in a language Mara had never heard but somehow understood. The words echoed in her mind, translated by ancestral memory. By blood shed freely, by choice given willingly, by bond forged in fire and tested in darkness, I name thee guardian. The light grew brighter, engulfing them. Mara Chin, descendant of Eleanor, last of the mediator lines, I place my heir in your protection. His life is your life. His pain is your pain. His future is your sacred charge. Mara felt power surge through her, ancient and vast. Not just her own abilities, but access to something larger, the collective strength of every mediator who'd stood on this platform throughout history. They were all there, whispering encouragement, lending their power to hers. Do you accept this burden, knowing you may never walk away? Knowing that his enemies become yours, his battles become yours, his destiny becomes intertwined with yours until death claims you both. I accept, Mara said, and her voice rang with harmonics that weren't entirely hers. Eleanor speaking through her. All the mediators speaking through her. I will guard him with my life, guide him with wisdom, and love him as my own. This I swear. The platform beneath them cracked, light pouring from the fissures. Rowan gasped as power washed over him, stabilizing, strengthening, organizing the chaos of his emerging abilities into something structured and controlled. It doesn't hurt anymore, he whispered in wonder. The noise in my head. It's quiet. That's the bond, Alistair explained, his voice thick with emotion. Mara is your anchor now. Officially. Permanently. You'll always be able to find each other, feel each other, support each other. The light faded slowly, sinking back into the stone. When Mara looked down at her palm, the cut had healed, but a mark remained. A golden symbol that matched the ones carved throughout the sanctuary, glowing faintly beneath her skin. Alistair and Rowan bore the same mark, though theirs gleamed crimson. The mark of the triad, Alistair said softly. King, heir, and guardian. Anyone with supernatural sight will see it and know what we are. Good. Mara flexed her hand, watching the symbol pulse with her heartbeat. Let them see. Let them know we're not afraid. A deep rumble shook the sanctuary. All three looked up as a section of the wall slid open, revealing a chamber beyond. Inside, ancient artifacts gleamed, weapons, armor, books, items of power that had been sealed away when the Guardian tradition ended. The sanctuary is opening its vaults, Alistair breathed. It recognizes you as legitimate. It's offering its resources. Rowan ran to the opening, peering inside with delight. Look, books about spirals. And crystals that hum. He turned back to them, his smile brighter than Mara had ever seen. This place likes me. This place was built for people like you, Mara said, joining him. She picked up a book, its pages filled with techniques for training young vampire-human hybrids. Another book detailed mediator combat forms. A third explained how to navigate vampire politics without losing your humanity. Everything we need, she murmured. It's all here. Not everything. Alistair stood at the chamber entrance, his expression serious. The council will challenge this. They'll claim the old laws no longer apply. They'll argue that I've overstepped my authority. Then we prove them wrong. Mara set down the books and walked back to him. We show the supernatural community that the Guardian tradition works. That Rowan is stronger and more stable with me than without. That the old ways were abandoned out of fear, not wisdom. And if they still refuse, then we fight. Mara's hand drifted to the golden mark on her palm. But this time, we're not alone. Every supernatural creature who believes in the old laws, who remembers when our kinds worked together, they'll support us. They have to. Alistair studied her, this fierce, brave woman who'd gone from fired school aide to guardian of the air in less than a week. You've changed. I've become who I was always meant to be, Mara corrected. Eleanor's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. She kept the bloodline alive so that one day, someone could finish what she started. She glanced at Rowan, who was arranging crystals in spiral patterns on the floor. And I think that someone is me. Through the bond, Alistair felt her absolute conviction. No doubt. No fear. Just purpose. We should rest, he said. Tomorrow, we make our announcement to the supernatural community. We invoke the old laws publicly. We dare the council to challenge us. And if they do, Then we show them what a triad can really do. Alistair's smile was sharp. They eliminated the Guardians because they were powerful enough to challenge vampire authority. Let's remind them why. That night, they slept in the sanctuary's living quarters, rooms that hadn't been used in 200 years, but felt strangely welcoming. Rowan fell asleep between them, peaceful in a way he'd never been. Mara lay awake, watching the golden mark on her palm pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Somewhere across the city, the council was probably convening, plotting their next move. Somewhere out there, enemies gathered. But here, in this ancient place, with a sleeping child between her and a vampire king who'd risked everything to protect his son, Mara felt something she'd never truly felt before. She felt like she belonged. Her phone buzzed. Alistair had given her a secure device. A message from an unknown number. The council demands an audience. 3 days. Neutral ground. Come alone or face war. Mara showed Alistair, who'd also been awake. What do? We don't go alone, he said simply. We go as a triad. King, heir, and guardian. We walk in there marked and bonded, and we dare them to break laws older than their authority. That's insane. That's victory. Alistair's eyes gleamed in the darkness. Because if they attack us, they'll be attacking the old ways themselves. And there are factions in the vampire world who've been waiting centuries for an excuse to challenge the council's power. So, we become the excuse. We become the revolution. Mara looked down at Rowan, sleeping peacefully, his small hand clutching hers. This strange, wonderful boy who'd changed her entire world. Who'd given her a family when she'd thought she'd always be alone. Okay, she whispered. Let's change the world. 3 days later, they would walk into the council chambers, marked, bonded, unafraid. They would invoke laws the council thought dead and buried. They would prove that the Guardian tradition wasn't just history, but the future. And whether through negotiation or force, they would make the supernatural world accept what it had tried to destroy. That sometimes, the most powerful magic wasn't vampire strength or mediator abilities or ancient bloodlines. Sometimes, the most powerful magic was simply this. A father willing to risk everything for his son. A woman willing to become family to strangers. And a child brave enough to trust that love was stronger than fear. Together, they would reshape the vampire world. Or die trying. But as Mara drifted off to sleep, the golden mark warm against her skin and Rowan's peaceful breathing beside her, she knew with absolute certainty which outcome would prevail. The council had forgotten what guardians were truly capable of. They were about to remember. The end.